game that a lot of people are focusing in on is a matchup between two rivals, Federal League rivals that played a couple of weeks ago and are now facing off for the second time this season. Greene versus Hoover. This is a game in which I'm very curious to see what's going to become of it, mainly because this is a very different game from what we saw a few weeks ago between the Vikings and the Bulldogs. The Bulldogs were not with Carson Deerlin just a couple weeks ago due to injury against Hoover, and I believe that was it. Greene did not have Semino Manson at quarterback, but now Manson was in the game last week for his team, and Deerlin eventually returned in the end of the regular season. So both players are expected for tonight's contest.
Yep.
I don't know what that's going to make between these two teams, because remind me, who was it that won the previous matchup between the Bulldogs and the Vikings? I believe it was
Greene.
It was Greene.
Because
yes.
Greene's 8-3 right now. They lost to McKinley, they lost to Jackson, and I believe their other loss was at a conference.
Yes, 41-34 was the Week 9 matchup. The Bulldogs won over the Vikings. The Bulldogs won their playoff opener 44-14 over 14 seed Columbus St. Charles. Hoover went to Columbus last week, beat a good DeSales team 23-21 on Paul Koskovich's 22-yard field goal as time expired. So, I think going into this, it looks as if Greene is a considerable favorite, but are there any certain factors that, from what you saw a couple weeks ago, that could lead Hoover into potentially pulling off an upset here tonight?
The been there, done that factor. Carson Deerlin's been here before. He's a senior, and Mitch, I think back when the season started, we talked about the favorites in the Fed. I said I liked McKinley, and I liked Hoover, because Deerlin, in my opinion, at the time coming into the season, was going to be the best quarterback in the Fed. It has not been the season Hoover won it at 6-5. It doesn't matter, though, right? Last week they both went 1-0. Now this week they're 0-0 again. It's win or go home time. If you are going to be on the road, you're going to lean on your senior quarterback that has, offers and looking to play at the next level. I think this can be a great game. It was 41-34 the first time. That's a one-score game. I think you're in store for the same thing tonight. I do like Greene, just how they're playing right now. Semino Manson did come into the game last week.
Right.
He did not start.
Yes.
It is unsure if he is starting tonight or not. Now, there's two sides to that, I think. One, Hoover hasn't seen him this year. There's film on him, obviously, up until, week 5 or 6 when he got hurt, I believe, against McKinley. And there's film on him, probably from other games in the past.
Sure.
Do you ride with the hot hand right now at quarterback who's come in and really helped Greene, or do you turn back to Semino Manson? Or do you go with the 2-quarterback system? That can get hairy at times because you want to ride the hot hand, but if you bring guys in every other drive, now last year for Lake, it worked. Last year it was always Butler, Jarvis. It didn't matter. This is a little different. I think Greene has to be semi-careful about the move they make here, though, because you don't want to disrupt the offense. The offense, Mitch, going back to week 10 against Lake, in which they dominated the Lake Blue Streaks. The first time all year we've seen somebody dominate Lake. I think this is going to be a very entertaining game. I think I like Greene here still, but I will not be shocked whatsoever if Hoover does pull off the upset. I don't really think it's an upset in terms of the seeding. It's an upset.
3 versus 11.
But they're familiar teams. They're separated. They're right next to each other in the counties or in the
right.
You know what I mean? Like I think it's gonna be a fun one. I really do. I'm gonna take the home team, right? But I won't be shocked if Hoover wins. I think if Greene wins, it's going to be really entertaining. It looks like the winner of this game, I believe on the other side of that bracket, it's 2 Columbus schools. So if you're cutting down the distance, a lot of people are already talking. It looks like the game could be at Mansfield, which is an hour for both schools.
Yeah.
Which Greene's familiar there. They beat Massillon there just 2 years ago. We'll see. I think this has a chance to be a very entertaining game and possibly one of the best games in Stark County tonight.
Greene, for the last 6 weeks, has relied on sophomore Tyson Hunka for their quarterbacking since Manson broke his collarbone in week 5. In that span, he's thrown for 572 yards, 11 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. They could go to a 2-quarterback system tonight because Mark Easton, he did not confirm a quarterback for Friday's game earlier in the week, and he said that, maybe they could operate in a 2-man system. That wouldn't necessarily be bad if they can have consistent play from both quarterbacks. We kind of saw that last week when we were in Hartville for the Lake Perry game. Now, Lake's been kind of operating that all season because they don't throw the ball as much. Greene's a little more susceptible to throwing, and, I think they also have some good running game as well.
Yeah, and also with Lake, I mean, this is Now, for 2 straight years, we've seen this. That's something that the Lake offense is used to, where for Green, you've played 2 quarterbacks this year, but it has not been every other drive or, depending on what it is every game. You know what I mean? Like, you had no choice but to put another quarterback because Samino Manson broke his collarbone. Like, you had no choice there. But that's where it gets tricky, I think, because Lake has done this now for 2 full years. The offensive line knows what it is. Like, when a certain quarterback's in, what his strengths are, what his weaknesses are. If you need to pass block a little more in case the quarterback wants to use his legs. If Green can get the running game going, I don't think it matters who's quarterbacking Green tonight. As long as they're not turning the ball over. If Green gets the running game going, which they got going against Lake, they ran 12 straight plays, of which people have said were the same exact play. And Lake couldn't stop it. They said, hey, here's our best running back. Here's our best guard play on the offensive line. We're going to run behind him. Stop it. And Lake couldn't. And listen, Green was up here to start the year. They dipped a little, especially after that loss to McKinley, and that's the game Manson got hurt. That was a game they were blitzing McKinley early on, then blew it in the second half, which you see it all the time. When you lose a teammate to an injury, it hurts you. When you lose a starting quarterback, that really hurts you because you're seeing it with the Browns right now. Look back to Indianapolis, right? PJ Walker got no first-team reps that week, and he looked rusty at first, but still did his job. It's a tough. Coach Geis is in a very tough position here, right? Do you ride the hot hand that's really helped your offense go? Do you go back to the steady hand that really got your team off to a great start? I don't know. Either way, I would not want to be Coach Geis making that decision. At the end of the day, the right decision is, did you win the football game? It might not even be your quarterback play at all. It could be your defense tonight. Who knows? That's going to be entertaining. The rest of the other games in Northeast Ohio tonight are going to be entertaining, though.
For sure. Really quick, Jordan Beal has set career highs in back-to-back matchups for Green. He had 125 yards against Lake at the game you mentioned, 165 yards last week against St. Charles, so he's coming in on a hot streak. The 2 games that we have tonight, one of them in Stark County, the other one in Tuscarawas. I'll be at the Tuscarawas game. I'll go through that really quickly. Garaway going up against East Knox. The Pirates got off to a good start in the opening round game against Rock Hill last week. I expect them to do kind of more of the same tonight against an East Knox squad that's had some good performances this year, but Garaway's just still this juggernaut of an offense that's got the IVC North Player of the South Player of the Year in Jensen Garber. They have a good quarterback in Brady Geibel. Dylan Sunland, if he can keep the rushing game going, he only had 9 carries last week for 103 yards and 3 scores. That's crucial for a Garaway team. They can also play defense. They also had a pick 6 last week. Let's go to the North game, though, because Canton South, this team wants to go on a big playoff run again, even more so than what they were able to do last year before losing to Jefferson Prep. They take on Akron Buchtel tonight. And now on the surface, Akron Buchtel may not seem like this team that can come in and be disruptor because they got off to a bad start this year. I believe they lost 4 of their first 5 games, but they rallied to win 5 of their last 6. They finished second in the Akron City Series. They won their playoff game last week, and Brian Williams' squad had some very good defensive stands against their playoff opponent. I believe they had 5 takeaways in the game. They had a pick 6 late in the game that essentially sealed the victory for the Griffins. Buchtel beat Youngstown Cardinal Mooney over in Mineral Ridge. So that's a big win for them. And I'm looking to see what they can do to stop Canton South tonight, because we all know about Poochie Snyder. He's 3 touchdowns away from breaking the Stark County all-time passing touchdowns record set by Cameron Blair of Sandy Valley. But if you're trying to take away from Canton South, what is the main thing that Buchtel has to focus on? Is it defense? Is it keeping the ball away from the Wildcats? I mean, I figure that's the point. Yeah.
How you stop a great offense is you control the time of possession. You limit the opportunities that offense has. Buchtel has to be disciplined on offense tonight. They have to be able to run the ball. They have to be able to pass and not turn the ball over, right? You don't want this to become a shootout, because we know when it goes shootout-wise, Canton South, well, they haven't been beat yet this year. They're 11-0. And we've seen what they're able to do. Now, their defense, I think, obviously is part of the weak side of them. But until somebody stops Poochie Snyder, it's hard to think somebody's going to stop Poochie Snyder. Nobody's been able to do that this year except for himself when he hit his throwing hand in a helmet and had to leave the game. And even then, it didn't matter. The backup quarterback comes in, leads a game-winning drive, they win still. I personally thought that their matchup last week said a lot because they were playing a team for the second time in 2 weeks in
Yes.
Northwest. Like that's hard to do. And this is a team I think that just has this week by week goal to go 1-0, but they know their end goal is to end the season on their own terms, not a team ending their season. And I have to ride with Canton South until somebody beats them. Unfortunately, now if somebody does beat them, there's no way for them to rebound and have a comeback game the next week because it's playoff time. But I think Bookville is going to give them a test. I do think Canton South still comes out on top tonight, though. I think this is going to be a really entertaining game as well. I think every game you have tonight, for the most part, looking at the schedule here, maybe outside of one Division I game here, is going to be a close football game. I really do.